4, 3, 2, 1. Panel, ladies and gentlemen, when we do not believe that compromise is possible, is the point in which compromise becomes less likely. The reason why compromise has to be idealized is because of the asymmetrical power dynamics, oppressive structures, and differing circumstances of people, whether these be a function of things that they can control or cannot control, such as the birth lottery, being born in a conservative family, being raised in a developing shittier country, or being part of a disenfranchised minority. We have to understand that people exist in a spectrum of capacity and emotional sensitivity. A lot of what side government says assumes that everybody is motivated in the same way. Just like when the previous speaker answered my POI and said, because they can see all these bad things happening in these particular communities. Sure, some people might be cognizant to the reality, but many other people don't give a shit. Because like what you mentioned, they're starving or they're poor, which is precisely why we need a sense of idealism in order to convince these people that the other side is not necessarily the enemy, but the other side, who may be the government, are the very people who stand between you and where you want to be. The reason why it has to be idealized is because those people who are too vulnerable or too weak or unable to see the reality of political reform need to have a hopeful and tangible belief to cling on, no matter how romanticized or idealized side government calls it out to be. 3 things you're going to get in my extension. Number 1, why idealization is the prerequisite to the structural reform, something that both opening teams consider to be important. And note that this missing link of it being a prerequisite comes upstream of the impacts that you get coming from opening opposition. Secondly, I'm going to give you a direct flip of opening government in terms of why it has to be idealized in order to get more critical mass in terms of better and literally more support for people, because we also care about moderates and we want people to be able to make the best and most informed decision. And number 3, where can we have better discourse and really explain to you what all this discourse is for? Because we agree with opening opposition, radicalization is bad, but how exactly does this stifle discourse, and why can we get better discourse when things are idealized? This is me demonstrating the counterfactual opening is. But before that, let's respond to a couple of harms that idealization or the compromise of this particular thing is accused of, right? A, OG tells us that people think that every discussion should now have some degree of progress and people might have this impact of becoming political butterflies and moving around. My first response is that it's good to be able to think that every discussion should be productive, because it should be, right? No matter it be how big or how small, the fact that you're able to arrange this meeting with the barangay captain or the opposing council, someone who previously was like ghosting you and didn't give a shit about your campaigns, is now sitting on the table and you're now having a meeting. Progress is progress, and we think that idealism actually channels you to be able to persevere and persist amidst adversity. Because the counterfactual on their side is that at any point you face opposition from someone you do not agree with, you're probably gonna be like, wag na yan, di naman niya gets, ganyan talaga yan. This whole toxic mentality of just confirming the biases that already exist, which are unproductive. The second idea here is that it's on side government where the voices of the radical drown out those of the moderates. Because the ones who are like in the far end of the spectrum are literally the ones foaming in the mouth and barking the loudest and say all sorts of shit about the other side. Guys, let's get away from debate land and realize that Republicans, conservatives, left-leaning, right-leaning people, those in the far end of the spectrum are the ones who are like most bitchy about these things, who like cancel and wreck the other side. That leads to 3 harms, right? Number 1, intimidation, wherein you feel like you cannot stand up to these people. B, apathy. You feel like even if you do, this is not going to do anything and it's a huge waste of time. And C, even if it works, and this is me being charitable to government, unlike our opening, even if you get this change, it's going to be motivated for the wrong reason because you want to crush the opposition or you want to be able to like beat them and prove that you're right. There's this egocentric approach which is not productive. Sure, UPM job, go ahead. These systems are replaced when people believe that they can be, because it's exactly in these oppressive authoritarian regimes that you don't look at it in an idealistic way is the point in which people get apathetic. Side government can't gaslight us and say, idealism means you'll be doing the same thing, insane, nothing happening. No, the heart of idealism is also smart. It's also hopeful and nuanced to believe that there are certain things that have to be challenged, and you can only do that when you're able to get the counterfactual. What else did side government tell us, right? They said that disagreements are good, and that's exactly where you get change, where people are angry. The problem here is that it's outcome dependent on people being rational. But for the majority of cases, and what you see on social media that people also in this debate agreed to, are that people are irrational as fuck. They are susceptible to groupthink and all these biases. People get offended, people lash out, people get vengeful because emotions, right? They also mentioned that, we're gonna degenerate to other kinds of avenues like parlor and all those things. It's exactly why these other forms of discourse become the only alternative that people rather have. Instead of having a formal debate in a town hall or in a square, people resort to these echo chambers and monoliths, of which confirm their existing beliefs because they feel like doing it in any other way, waste of time yan. Di naman sila makikinig. Wala yan. Ganto talaga. That's the narrative that is reinforced. Even if we get change inside government, we think that this change is going to be something that's motivated by anger, by fear, by resentment, and it ultimately is not able to get a plurality of ideologies, which we think is the heart of being idealistic. An open ear to be able to listen in order for us to have more information, in order to build a better counterfactual in terms of really preserving our agency, preserving our choice, and truly making a better and a more informed decision. For all of these reasons, idealism is the way to go, and we are very proud to stand on side the opposition.